Hello, thank you for joining me once again. I am reading The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis. We are on chapter 3, okay? So those of you who have the book, it is page 23. Please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And without further ado, we are going to read chapter 3 of The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis. Chapter 3. Sources and descendants of the teachings, including definitions of God, basics, and prerequisites. The teachings. To you, they may be lost, found, or misplaced, earth-shaking, new, or fancy, basic, old, and simple. It matters not. They are timelines, useful and invaluable. This book tells several stories other than my personal one. It tells a story of creation, a story of a long forgotten history, and a story of a spiritual tradition that gave birth to many legends. But primarily, the book accurately reveals the teachings that without which none of these stories would exist or matter. Like some of the stories, while these teachings are part of ancient history, they can also be keys to a promising future. Some of the teachings of the Children of the Law of One presented here have been around a very long time, as far back as Atlantis, and some not so long ago. The unadulterated teachings of the Children of the Law of One have never been directly made public before. But some of them are the source of many other teachings that have been made public. So you may already know certain things you're going to read in this book, yet some of it will still be new information. Other readers may find that much or all of it will be new to them. Obviously, if you are already enlightened, reading this book would just be a waste of your time because its purpose is to help those who aren't enlightened become enlightened. Since the word enlightenment has many meanings, though, I should probably define what we mean by it. We call someone enlightened who, number one, has had a final death experience of the selfish separate self, thus bursting the illusion of separation from everything/God. This is similar to a near-death experience, but it is deliberately cultivated through spiritual teachings/ego busting. It is also fully experienced rather than near, and doesn't require nearly dying physically. Number two, has realized and permanently returned to a state of absolute oneness with the universal spirit/God. Number three, is always living in harmony with the universe and doing the will of God as a servant of God. Number four, always lives in a state of unselfish love. All of the above are one and the same thing, and the change takes place at the same time. If you haven't achieved that yet, then even if you think you know it all, this book could still help you if you will just check your ego at the door and actually apply the teachings rather than just letting them be more knowledge you scan into your brain. But generally, regardless of your familiarity with the teachings presented here, the book can offer a sort of oasis of fellowship and inspiration to anyone who feels inside the kindness, compassion, and harmlessness, not hurting anyone or anything. are more important than any belief of any kind. Descendants. One of the first questions I asked an elder monk was about Buddhism. Raja, why is this monastery located here in a country so full of Buddhist and Buddhist monasteries? Several reasons, which we will discuss soon. Are we related to Buddhism in any way? In some way? Buddhism is a beloved relative of ours, and thus some of the teachings are the same. But this is not just the case with Buddhism. We are also related to the Christian, Jewish, Islamic, and many, many other religions. Although some religions are almost unrecognizable from their origins now. Almost any religion that speaks of one God, regardless of the name they call God, is somehow related. Why is that? Most people consider such religions conflicting, not relatives, and especially Buddhism, a beloved relative. A beloved relative? The teachings and heritage of the children of the law of one predate Buddhism and all other religions. They all originally came from teachers or teachings of the children of the law of one, or those who somehow became one with the universal spirit, the one God, in some other fashion. But keep in mind that while you may find bits of the children's teachings here and there in many other spiritual teachings and religions, they are also unique unto themselves. Our teachings are the source, the roots of the many branches of the tree. And unlike some of the branches, the roots are still alive, still totally pure and uncorrupted. They are like the original roots of the grapevine from which all the different varieties of wine grapes eventually developed from. The teachings you are going to hear about and read about here in the monastery's library are the original and presented from the pure, direct lineage. Although, keep in mind that any teachings, including these, aren't as important as simply applying unselfish love, kindness, and compassion in your life, regardless of the source. This is where many have gone wrong, making the teachings or the leaders or the religions more important than the point of what they are really for in the first place. So, will we learn only the pure original teachings? No. Our knowledge has been accumulating for ages, and you will learn these too. In fact, some of the knowledge is about our existence before our time on earth, and these too you will learn in time. But we don't just present the children's teachings here. You will also learn the ways and beliefs of all the world's religions. Why do that if we have the pure and original source of all other teachings here? Other religions and teachings, other religious teachings and cultures are taught for the purpose of revealing the common threads of unity and truth that could be found woven through diverse religions, and to give teachers of the children of the law of one more of an ability to understand and communicate with anyone they might need to, regardless of their culture or religion. Also, because of that, there have been other monasteries of the children in various parts of the world. Another time, I also asked Gabriel some questions about our monasteries in their religious relationship to Buddhism. The children's monasteries, though few in number, were the oldest in many regions of the world, including Tibet. Buddhism is a separate path, didn't appear until thousands of years after the children had established monasteries in the East. Buddhism, like most religions, was in fact originally one of the offsprings or branches of the children. It developed from the effects of teachings of adept monks of the children of the Law of One. These monks wandered the regions throughout the area and taught the local people there and throughout much of what is now called Asia and the Orient. Various teachers of the children, who often remained anonymous and never spoke of the secret source of their true lineage or home, became known as Buddhas. Did you know there was more than one Buddha? No, I thought Buddha was Buddha, just like Jesus was Jesus. That is not so. There were more than one, just as there were many Zoroasters and many Saint Germains. And why? Various reasons. I will explain some other time, but that is not the important subject of our conversation right now. Is that why there are different Buddhist traditions and variations in their teachings, I asked? Partly. After the various adepts left, Buddhist religions and many varieties sprung up all over Asia as a result and modified it in different ways. What about Zen? Zen is often considered an offshoot of Buddhism and also considered to be a shortcut to enlightenment. But there are no real shortcuts, in the sense that the same things must be experienced and the death of the selfish separate self ultimately faced and transcended. And while it has become intertwined with Buddhism, the roots of Zen were from one of our initiates by the name of Zend, Z-E-N-D, which you will undoubtedly read about here when it is time, because you have connected to a Zend that you will find most interesting and enlightening. Author's note: that statement related to an incarnation of the being also known as Jesus. Zen is our offspring, as is Buddhism, Christianity, and Judaism, and Islam. So, you could say Buddha was Christian and Jesus was Buddhist? Yes, but only in a way. You aren't getting it, are you? Think about what you know of, which is quite limited at this time. Of the lives of Buddha and Jesus, do you see anything that conflicts? Or do you see examples of love and compassion in indications of similarity? So, what do you think the source of these paths that they spawned? The source of their teachings, the source of their examples, if not the same understanding or the same God? You're saying these all have the same source? Of course. And notice, they all teach of oneness or a oneness God, yet they may disagree over names or particulars. And most importantly, they believe in godness, goodness, compassion, unselfish love, as the way of life. So they all came from the children of the law of one. That makes so much sense of so many things that I couldn't understand before. And this particular monastery housed the roots of other beliefs and teachings for several reasons. Even though well hidden from those few who had seen it that were not of the order, legends were born, even amongst the offspring traditions and religions. They told of a paradise, a beautiful heavenly community that existed amongst the great mountains. But it is prophesied that the land of the teachers is to be desecrated and destroyed. It has begun. We only have so long. It is just a matter of when, not if. But it matters not. Which is more important, a container or which the container contains? Nature, secrecy, and other methods did protect the monastery for quite a while longer at least. While countless Buddhist monasteries were destroyed, our monastery remained undiscovered for a while longer, for as long as was necessary in the great scheme of things, an infinite lineage. As I assume you've already gathered, when I first began to learn the history of the order, I was just amazed. I had never heard of any religion, spiritual tradition, or culture with such an extensive lineage, pure lineage, or broad influence. The prehistory and history of many religions can be obscure and have a great deal of unknowns about their past and true origins. But the children record a history that stretches all the way back from the creation of life in the universe to the present. And while some religions developed from a primitive, ignorant society and have a lineage of bloody and barbaric intolerance, even the children's earliest history on earth records them as compassionate, tolerant, highly evolved beings living in a sophisticated civilization. Where and when did it all start? Did what start? When did the children of the law of one begin? On earth? Yes. The earthly lineage actually begins with the time of Atlantis. The children of the law of one was the spiritual order of those in Atlantis who lived a spiritual life. Those who were compassionate, kind, harmless, and wanted to maintain oneness with God. So where does this monastery in Tibet come into the picture? When Atlantis was on the verge of final destruction from the great upheavals, branches of the children, having read the signs, went to various places on earth. The main group went with the children's Grand Master, Thoth, to Egypt to continue the great work. Author's note: the great work he was referring to will be explained later. After many years in Egypt, that particular branch of the children went to Tibet. These Atlantean children of the law of one, including the Grand Master, were the ancestral founders of our monastery in Tibet. Let me reread that. These Atlantean children of the law of one, including the Grand Master, were the ancestral founders of our monastery in Tibet. So, if everyone mainly hibernated here at the monastery for so many years, how did they influence or start other religions? Although commonly known, human history, The children of the Law of One continue to maintain their center in Tibet, but some of its teachers made the great sacrifice of leaving their brothers and sisters in the monastery to help people in the outside world. They humbly and lovingly traveled throughout the world, bringing light into the darkness of the ages. The teachings and influence of these children have become the foundations of many other paths, religions, and legends. It all made sense. It all made sense of so many things about religions, philosophies, history, and spiritual teachings that never quite made sense to me before. You probably won't even believe it if I told you all the religions, cultures, arts, and science that have been created based on these outside world teachers who lived disguised lives. So I won't. But you can think about it and draw your own conclusions. Redefining God and love. First, let me cover some important grounds, things I've learned in my earliest days at the monastery that will give you a frame of reference. So before we delve deeper into teachings, let's clarify the meanings of a couple of words and concepts that will be used a great deal in this book: God and love. And in a different way than you may have heard them used before. Both terms and concepts can mean many different things to many different people. Love. In my first days and months at the monastery, I attended courses given by elder monks. In one of my world human concepts and terminology courses, which was given by the elder monk Raja, we began covering the teachings on the various types of emotions that people often lump together and call love. Love can mean sex. We made love. Love can mean you really like something. I love my new car. Love can mean the pleasure or thrill you get from someone you have a romantic relationship with. I love Nadia. Or love can mean compassion, kindness, caring, giving, sharing. That's the kind of love that brings true happiness, inner peace. It's the kind of love we all really need and need to give. It's also the kind of love that would make the world a far better place. So, if we wish to focus on developing this kind of love, we must clearly delineate it and give it a name. Thus, we call it unselfish love, because that is what it is. Now, God. Raja went on to define the various ways the people of the world see and understand God. God is a very abstract and a difficult thing for the human mind to fathom. To paraphrase it, the ancient teachings, the God I am talking about cannot be talked about. It means that God is really impossible to explain or truly understand intellectually. But with that in mind, I will endeavor to explain the unexplainable. The big guy in the sky, concept of God. People have often personalized or humanized the concept of God. Whether consciously or subconsciously, many people think of God as having a human-like appearance. A great big man with long silver hair and a beard that lives somewhere out there beyond the sky, in heaven. That has always bothered me. Why do people think of God that way? I said. There are several reasons people think of God in this way. Partly it is due to how hard it is to grasp such an infinite and abstract concept of God. But unfortunately, sometimes this human-like idea of God was deliberately fostered as, number one, a means to gain wealth and power over the masses. Number two, a means to justify cruel or horrible things some men wanted to do, like war. Number three, a means of propagating sexism, or number four, all of the above. Unfortunately, with that kind of human-like conceptualization of God, also comes assigning human-like personality traits to God. And some of them are the very human-like negative personality traits, such as anger, jealousy, and vengefulness. The followers of many different religions have their own personalized versions of a humanized God. Some versions of God have similar personal traits, but there are various differences. Subsequently, the rules that people believe He has given for us to obey are sometimes similar and sometimes very different. Is that a problem, though? Why can't people all have their own idea of God if it makes them happy or fits into their culture, I asked. They can. They are welcome to it. We don't care about what name of God or idea of God they believe in. If it helps them become better, kinder people, that's our only concern. But think about it. People will even go to war because their personalized version of God is different than someone else's. And of course, each side in the war always believes God is on their side. Understanding this universal versatility and oneness of God eliminates this and many other tragic acts. You who will be teachers in various parts of the world will be confronted with this constantly, and you need to understand the various concepts of personalized gods in order for you to reveal that there is more to God that goes beyond what they think. Many things about various personalized gods just don't make sense. This includes both the things God does and the things God does not do, allows. For instance, animals and innocent children are suffering on this planet. Why? If you accept a human-like version of God, why doesn't He put a stop to this? Many people who have limited views of God can understand this when you explain it to them, as long as they have the slightest open mind and the Spirit of God is present in you when you explain it to them. Now let's consider God in a different, unhumanized way. Good God. The children of the law of one teach that God is all and includes all. It is the one that includes the many. It is within us, without us, and we are individual parts of the whole of it. While many religions are similar to identical concepts of the one God in their scriptures, they may still use the idea that their God is different from the others as a reason for war or killing. One of the problems is that while many religions do teach that God is one, is all things, is everywhere, etc., they still propagate the concepts of the human-like God in the sky And thus the religions the religion's followers still seem to think of God that way. They also sometimes teach that it is only their religion that has the one God, rather than that God is the oneness of all. But some religions don't teach that, do they? Even if the religion isn't propagating the humanized God concept, people still usually think that way. I will explain why in a moment. But first, let's look at the consequences of thinking of God in a humanized fashion, regardless as to why they do. Unfortunately, the humanized God idea naturally leads to thinking of God as an individual of sorts. Then a person's or a religion's God can be given all kinds of personal traits that either the individual or the religion wants God to have in order to justify their human behavior. But that whole idea goes against the God in everywhere and everything concept, because if God is thought of as an individual, it also leaves us with the impression that he is separate from us and the universe. But if there is one God, which is all and is everywhere at all times, etc., it can't be separate from us or the universe. So, it can't be an individual in any normal interpretation of the word, other than if you consider everything in the universe, the entirety of the universe itself, as one universe, and in some sense then as an individual. So, God is an individual also? In some sense. Let's contemplate that for a moment. We know the universe is one huge, probable infinite, something that is everywhere and everything, all existence as we know it, etc. Even our bodies are comprised of stardust, the stuff of the universe. Doesn't it stand to reason then that the one God must also be the very universe itself? And if that is so, and there is some sort of design consciousness and energy that pervades the entire universe, all of creation, wouldn't that be God's spirit and consciousness? Thus, the consciousness of God is the consciousness of the universe. Universal consciousness, then, is a consciousness that is one and the same as God's. And thus, the Spirit of God, the life force that is all creation, is the spirit of the universe, the universal spirit. Once all humans had the consciousness of their oneness with the universal spirit, and that is why you are here, to regain that universal consciousness and oneness with God. Then you will be the lamps to help others regain their lost way also. So for clarity, in the majority of this book, God will often be referred to as the universal spirit, and sometimes as the one. It helps clarify that when we are speaking of God, we are not referring to the big guy in the sky, concepts of God. But even though using the words universal spirit helps prevent the confusion with the humanized concept of God, the term God will still be used from time to time throughout the book. When it is, just keep in mind what that means to us. Back to my course with Raja. To summarize, the children of the law of one teach that The universal spirit, rather than being an individual as we know it, is a multiplicity that is one. It comprises and is all things in the entire universe together as one. It is the beginning, the beingness, energy, essence, and life force that is everywhere and everything in the universe, including us, including nature, and including the universe itself. And it has a consciousness. Also included as part of the one universal spirit and the oneness that is the universal spirit is the hierarchy of spiritual beings who exist on many different levels. You may think of them as angels, guardian angels, ascended masters, adepts, or saints who have been passed on, etc. Being free from the limitations of physical life, they exist in spiritual form and share the same consciousness as the universal spirit, universal consciousness. They are consciously part of, one with, and an aspect of the universal spirit. Hierarchy beings thus act in harmony with the will of the universal spirit, as if they were arms or extensions of it. Yet they are somewhat related to us, and thus close to us also. So, they are links to the entirety of the universal spirit who can help guide us and have certain influences in our lives. Is that like what some people call guardian angels? Yes, but it is just one of many beings that form the link of the hierarchy, and the universal spirit is also comprised of this great link of oneness. As you study the ancient biblical texts in the library, you will find that an early name for God in some of them, or perhaps I should say God was referred to in some of them as Elohim. The word Elohim is plural and both masculine and feminine. Thus, it includes the concept of a hierarchy of spiritual beings that also comprise God and insinuates that God is neither an individual nor a he. This also leaves room to include all creation, all beings, all humans as being part of God. Thus, the Elohim concept of God is similar to what the Atlantean children of the Law of One teach about the universal spirit, and you may find this helpful in your work someday. Let me see. The source and purpose of the teachings. The teachings in this book weren't created for the purpose of being enshrined or worshiped, nor to influence the reader to worship any religion, book, or religious leader. These ancient teachings are thus non-denominational and or omni-denominational. They are not from or by any religion. And they are not religious teachings, yet they do teach about the universal spirit, our relationship to it, and our place in the universe. It is our hope that publishing this book will help people in several ways: to regain their connection with the universal spirit, to regain their place in the order of things in the universe, to become free from that which creates suffering for themselves and others, and to become unselfishly loving, compassionate, kind, and harmless. The teachings of the Atlantean children of the Law of One were developed by beings who were one with God and the universe, so to speak. You could call them angels incarnate, enlightened people, fools, masters, children, true teachers, saints, whatever. It doesn't matter. Regardless of what you choose to call them, they had universal consciousness, and thus an awareness that included the spiritual realms which permeate and are the foundation of all physical things in the universe. This high or spiritual consciousness gave them a great understanding of everything in life, including us, God, and universal laws and truth. We will also refer to these laws and truths as universal principles. The teachings are thus reflections of these greater understandings of the big picture and present universal principles within them. They are a kind of the facts of life in the universe that most people have lost touch with and are thus living out of harmony with. These universal principles are also aspects of the universal spirit. They are all things we once knew and were aware of, because we also were once higher conscious beings. Let me read that part over. Because we also were once higher consciousness beings. But that was in a time when our spiritual natures were dominant and we were still in a state of oneness with the universal spirit. This will be explained in depth in a later chapter. But now the spiritual nature within most people is so suppressed that their awareness of these things is blocked to one degree or another. Most people have lost so much awareness that they aren't even aware of the fact that they aren't aware that they are part of this one universe. But all people still have some awareness of their lost heritage deeply buried within them. It is just asleep or suppressed. This is one area where the ancient teachings are important because of what they can do to help put us back in touch. Okay, I'm going to stop here where we're at, and I will read the second half of chapter 3 of The Children of the Law of One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by Jon Peniel. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time. Please subscribe, like, and share, and come back to finish listening to the rest of this important, invaluable information that is for your benefit, for your highest good, and the evolving of us all. Okay? So until then, have the most benevolent day.